Hey guys, Plonkerboy900 here and welcome back to a brand new challenge video. Before we get on with this video, I do just want to say that there's going to be a couple of changes to my schedule. Not only am I going away for a week, but I'm also starting a new job soon. As you may have seen in my community post, this means that streams are going to unfortunately have to take a back seat for a while. I will still try and stream every now and then, but at the moment it's just not doable. I'm going to continue to try my best to get as many videos out as possible, but please bear with me if the videos take a little bit longer to come out than normal, at least for the first few weeks. Anyway, on with today's challenge. As you may have noticed, I've been doing a lot of ROM hacks recently, and I really wanted to continue this trend. Today we'll be looking at a ROM hack called Polished Crystal. It's a ROM hack of Crystal that has a lot of new features. Physical special split is in there, some new Pokemon from Gen 4 such as the evolutions, at least to old Pokemon, such as Sylveon and Mamoswine, etc. The game's also a lot more difficult, so I decided to go with a challenge that could be difficult, but one that I also thought would be interesting to watch. Today we find out, can you beat Pokemon Polished Crystal using only in-game trades? The rules are very simple. I can only use Pokemon that are getting a trade, and this does not include wonder trades which are available in this game, although I might do a video on that in the future if you're interested. No items in battle obviously, and HM users are allowed when I need them, but I'm not allowed to use them in battle. Alright, that's the rules out of the way. As always, shout out goes to these people, who found the dabbing Delibird in the last video. Once again, he's in this one too, so if you see him, just comment down below the timestamp and you might get featured in the next video. Alright, with all that said, let's get this challenge underway. I start the game and pick the female character, calling her Rem. You guys know the drill by now, comment down below if you get the reference. Obviously I'm going to need to use our starter until we get our first trade, so for those who are interested I picked Totodile. We actually have to face Lyra, who isn't in the base game, and we beat her Cyndaquil named Cinder relatively easily, gaining 69 experience.
Lamau.
As always we name our rivals Wigo, and we can now catch our first Pokemon to trade away. That ends up being a Poliwag which I catch, and then make our way to Violet City where we give it to this person to trade. In return he gives us a Voltorb. It's quite a bit different from the Onix you normally get in Crystal, but either way, Electric's good against the first gym as well, so I'm pretty happy with this. It's nicknamed Mimic, and it's holding the Persim Berry which cures confusion. With our new Voltorb I try the first gym. Faulkner starts off with a Pidgey, so I lead with Mimic of course, and the problem here is that we're already level 15, which means that Voltorb already disobeys me. There is a workaround though with this, as the move Rollout is considered one move even if you hit it 5 times, so that's exactly what I do. Pidgey goes down no problem and Pidgeotto's really not doing that much damage, and Rollout is absolutely destroying her team right now. Pidgeotto does survive on a sliver of health and go for a super potion, but that's fine as Rollout's super powered by now and it's enough to take it out. Faulkner's final Pokemon is a Hoothoot. Thankfully Rollout doesn't miss, and it is enough to take it out from full health as it is full powered now. This first gym could have been really difficult with Mimic not obeying us, but we got quite lucky. Bugsy was a similar story. His Bug-type Pokemon are weak to Rollout as well, so this seems like a good strategy. Butterfree's up first, and in this game it's part Psychic, so it's not 4 times weak to Rollout, so as you can see it doesn't really do that much. We get put to sleep as well, which is not ideal, but we do eventually wake up and start another Rollout chain. His stab confusions are actually doing quite a lot of damage and we end up getting confused. Thankfully though our berry kicks in, and one more Rollout is enough to take it out. Next up is Beedrill, but Rollout is quite powerful now, so there is just no way he's surviving that. The same can be said for Yanma as well, who goes down in one hit too. We're already down to his final Pokemon Scyther. Voltorb's pretty quick and we're quite a high level, so we outspeed, and Rollout is an easy one-shot. Thank God for Rollout. This one move made the first 2 gyms a complete cakewalk. We gain the second badge, but before we can leave Azalea Town, we have to face Wigo once again. To be honest though, this fight was really easy, so I'll just skip over this for now, and instead let's get ourselves our next trade. I catch an Abra just south of Goldenrod City, and in the department store I can trade it for an Abra. I'm pretty sure this is the same trade as in the original games, but I'm pretty happy to have a Machop on the team. A strong fighting type is not only good for the upcoming gym, but Machamp is a really strong Pokemon in its own right, and in this particular ROM hack we don't even need to trade to evolve it. It's also an adamant nature, which is incredibly useful. I train it up a few levels and take on the 3rd gym leader Whitney. First up is Clefairy, and the fairy type is in this game, so I start with Mimic, and go for a Thunderbolt for well over half, as her disarming voice really doesn't do much at all. One more Thunderbolt easily takes out Clefairy, and next up is Teddiursa, but it can't survive 2 Thunderbolts either. Next up is Munchlax. Now that we've got 2 Pokemon as well, I should mention that our battle style is set. This means that we can't switch out between Pokemon. Munchlax is taking quite a beating from Thunderbolt, but he is setting up a rollout. We managed to take it out before it gets too powerful though, and now we're down to our final Pokemon Miltank. I go straight for the Thunderbolt, which does just under half, but she just goes for a defense curl. I land a second Thunderbolt, which brings it down to red health, as she starts another rollout chain. Even with the defense curl boost, it doesn't do that much, and we can just finish it off with one more Thunderbolt. That's 3 badges down already, and we didn't even need Machop. After that gym fight, Mimic grew to level 30, which means it evolves into Electrode. And while fighting the Kimono Girls in Ecruteak City, Machop evolves into Machoke. This is a pretty big upgrade over Machop, so I'm kinda happy with this. Before fighting the 4th gym, we have to face Swigo once again, but this fight wasn't too bad. First up is Haunter, so I lead with Machoke, and we have the super effective knockoff, which is physical in this game. He goes for Curse, and then I just go for knockoff for the KO, and next up is his starter Bayleaf. I don't really want to get hurt by the Curse anymore, so I decide to swap into Electrode, but we do end up getting poisoned by a Poison Powder. Now we're level 32 though, Mimic isn't obeying us again, so it is a bit of a difficult fight, but we managed to bring it down to red health. Unfortunately though, he does go for a Super Potion, and we can't take it out before going down ourselves. I send in Machoke once again and just go for Karate Chop, which does okay damage as we're hit with a Disarming Voice. Even with a crit it doesn't do much, and another Karate Chop is enough to finish it off thanks to a critical hit. Next up is Drowsy, so I just go for the knockoff for an easy KO, and next up is a Magnemite who's weak to Karate Chop, so it also goes down in one hit. Zwigo's final Pokemon is a Zubat, so I just go for the knockoff, which he somehow survives. We do end up getting confused, but that's not a problem as we hit through confusion and take it out with one more knockoff. Zubat goes down and we've beaten Zwigo once again. Next up is the 4th gym leader Morty. First up is Haunter, so I lead off with Machoke, and go for the knockoff as we're hit with a Nightshade. Obviously it doesn't do that much, and one knockoff is enough to take it out from full health. Next up is Noctowl, who's also part ghost in this game, who hits us with the confusion for small damage, as I go for knockoff, but once again Machoke doesn't listen to me. He goes for Karate Chop instead, which doesn't do anything, and we get hit with another confusion. This time he does listen though, and knockoff does a huge amount of damage, but unfortunately we can't take another confusion, so we go down and all that's left now is Mimic. I outspeed and go for a Thunderbolt, which is obviously enough to take it out, and next up is Misdreavus. I try and attack, but he doesn't listen, and then we get hit by a Shadow Ball, but the next turn we do manage to hit, and it does good damage. All I need to do is land one more Thunderbolt, but of course, instead he decides to go for Rollout, which isn't enough to KO, and we get taken out by a Shadow Ball. That is really annoying. I try again though, and this time we get to Gengar, who Mimic can't even damage unfortunately, so now it's just down to Machoke. Thankfully Gengar misses the Hypnosis, and much to my surprise, knockoff is actually a one-shot. Now it's the turn of that Noctowl again, but we get lucky as his confusions really don't do that much, and Muscle listens to me twice in a row. This was his last Pokemon on this run, so we earn the 4th badge, and finally our Pokemon are going to listen to me again. We arrive in Olivine City where we can actually get our next in-game trade, but unfortunately I actually can't get the Pokemon we need Steelix just yet. We will be getting one very soon though, don't you worry. The Pokemon we get in return is a Kangaskhan, which is definitely something I want. Instead, I make my way up to the lighthouse, where Jasmine asks us to go to Cianwood City, so that's exactly what we do. We arrive and while there take on the 5th gym leader Chuck. This fight wasn't too bad. He starts off with a Primeape, so I lead off with Muscle, and go for a close combat as he lowers our defense with Screech. Close combat is a one-hit KO, and next up is Farfetch, but our defenses are really low now. I decide to swap into Mimic, who takes an Aerial Ace no problem, and just one-hit KOs with a Thunderbolt. Hitmontop's up next but isn't really a problem. His Sucker Punches really don't do that much damage and 2 Thunderbolts are enough to take it out. His last Pokemon is Poliwrath, who's weak to Electric, so I just go for the Thunderbolt, which somehow he actually survives. He goes for Dynamic Punch but it misses, so one more Thunderbolt takes it out and we've already got 5 badges. Now we can finally get our Steelix. This is the Cliff area from the Heart Gold Soul Silver remakes, and just like in those games you can find wild Steelix. I do eventually find one and catch it, and now we can finally trade it for a Kangaskhan. I think this is going to be a really useful member of the team. It's got good bulk, good speed, and good attacking stats too. And I've never really used one before, so I'm looking forward to this. There's a little Team Rocket subplot here, where we have to fight the Executive Archer, but this fight wasn't really that much more difficult than your normal Team Rocket fight, so I'll spare you this one. There's also a battle with Faulkner's dad for some reason, which was interesting, but he uses flying types as well, so Mimic just wipes the floor with him. We return to Jasmine and give Amphi the secret potion, and now we can take on the 6th gym leader Jasmine. This fight was actually kind of difficult, but because the AI was actually smart for once. First up is Starmie, so I lead off with Electrode and go for a Thunderbolt, but she swaps out into Steelix. She predicted my Thunderbolt. I decide to swap into Machoke, but she somehow predicts that as well and swaps back into Skarmory. How did they know I was going to do that? I decide just to stay in as we get hit by a Drill Peck, which we survive no problem and go for a close combat, but it only does about half and we're going to go down the next turn, so I swap back into Electrode again. But somehow she predicts that I was going to do this and swaps back into Steelix again. Jasmine has got to be cheating, there is no other explanation to this. I decide this time to swap into Joey, as she just goes for Screech, but we really can't do much damage before we go down. I send in Muscle and go for the close combat, which is almost enough to take it out but not quite, but she just goes for another Screech. She then fully heals with a max potion, so this finally means we can take it out with 2 more close combats. Now Skarmory comes back out and takes out Muscle, so I swap back into Mimic and go for a Thunderbolt and she doesn't switch out this time. It goes down and next up is Magneton. Our Thunderbolts really aren't doing much damage and we get confused, but once again our Berry kicks in. It was a close one but we managed to take it out, but we're in bad shape and she still has 2 Pokemon. Next up is Fortress, so I go for Thunderbolt for over half, as she goes for Rollout, but we survive with 3 health and take it out with 1 more. That was insanely close. We're now down to a final Pokemon but we're on 3 health. Surely we can't win this, right? I take a risk and go for Thunder, which hits, and we get the paralysis. Not only that, she gets fully paralyzed. That is insanely lucky. I go for a Thunderbolt just to be safe, and it is enough to finish it off, and we barely win the 6th gym badge. That was the luckiest fight I have had in a long time. Before we can reach Mahogany Town, there's another fight with Lyra, but she was really easy to beat, so I won't waste your time. Who wasn't so easy to beat though was the 7th gym leader Price. He starts off with a Dugong, so I lead with Mimic and go for Thunderbolt, but he predicts it and goes into Mamoswine. I don't want a repeat of Jasmine, please. I swap into Machoke as we're hit with a weak Magnitude, and then I just go for a close combat, which is almost enough to take it out. He does heal with a Citrus Berry, but he must have gone for Avalanche this turn as we're faster, and 1 more close combat is enough to finish it off. Dugong comes back out, so I swap back into Mimic as he goes for Rain Dance. This is actually good for me as Thunder's 100% accurate in the rain. I go for it, but actually it's not enough to take it out, much to my surprise. We're hit with a rain boosted Waterfall as well, but we take it no problem, and finish it off with the Thunderbolt. Next up is Sneasel, so I swap back into Machoke, as he goes for Icicle Crash, but thankfully it misses. We have the priority Muck Punch, so I go for it as it's 4 times super effective, and needless to say it's enough to take it out, and next up is Cloyster. He goes for the Defense Curl, which means our close combat doesn't do as much as I was expecting, and I think we're going to go down this turn, so I just go for a Mach Punch to get as much damage in as I can. Instead of attacking though, he goes for Supersonic, which doesn't even work. I decide just to go for a close combat this turn, as we're hit with a Water Pulse and Confused, but we hit through Confusion and take it out with 1 more close combat. It's now down to Price's final Pokemon, Lapras. I go for close combat, but unfortunately we hit ourselves in Confusion and go down, so I just swap into Mimic and go for Thunderbolt, which does about half. We get confused by Confuse Ray, but once again our Person Berry kicks in. I don't know why it never goes away, but I'm not complaining. Because of this I can just easily go for 1 more Thunderbolt, which takes out Lapras and earns us the 7th badge. There's more Team Rocket stuff here, but the only thing worth noting is the fight with Zwigo. He starts off with a Golbat, so I lead with Joey and go for a Headbutt, and we get a critical hit right off the bat. Pun very much intended. He goes for Wing Attack, but it really doesn't do that much damage, and 1 more Headbutt takes it out, and next up is Magneton. We actually have the move Bulldoze, which is 4 times super effective, and needless to say it's a one-shot. Next up is Haunter, but we're faster and have the super effective Crunch, which is also a one-shot, and next up is Sneasel. We get outsped and hit by an Ice Punch, but we take the hit no problem and go for Strength, which is a fighting type move in this game, so it's also 4 times super effective and is a one-shot as well. We're already down to his final Pokemon, Meganium, which in this game is part Fairy. I just go for the Headbutt and it does decent damage, but we get hit by a super powerful Petal Dance. We do just survive though, so we can get 1 more Headbutt in, but we don't get the flinch and we go down to 1 more Petal Dance. So I just swap into Muscle, who takes a Petal Dance, and go for a close combat which, despite being not very effective, still does okay damage. I was hoping he'd hit himself in confusion, but he doesn't, and takes us out with another petal dance, but it's okay as I can just swap into Mimic and go for a couple of hits to take it out from there. Meganium goes down and once again we beat Zwigo. We take down Team Rocket with ease, including the Executive Archer, and in the process Muscle grows to level 51 and evolves into Machamp. Once again this is a big upgrade, so I'm really happy with this. We can now travel to Blackthorn City where we can get our final in-game trade. If we talk to this girl here, she asks for a Jinx. In exchange, she'll give us a Mr. Mime. Seems like a decent trade to me. I catch a Jinx in the ice path, and trade it for the Mr. Mime, which is named Doris, which is by far the best name for a Mr. Mime I've ever seen. It's also a fairy type, so this will really come in useful for the 8th gym. Speaking of which, Claire wasn't too bad. First up is Gyarados, so I lead with Mimic, and just go straight for the 4-time super effective Thunderbolt for an easy one-shot. Next up is Yanmega, who's part dragon in this game. As I learned the hard way, as our Thunderbolt really doesn't do much damage, as we get hit with a Supersonic, but as always our Persimberry heals us right away. I decide just to go for Explosion, in the hopes it would take it out, but it really doesn't do much damage at all. That was embarrassing. I swap in Joey, who also gets confused, but we don't hit ourselves, and a Headbutt is enough to take it out from there. Next up is Ampharos, so I go for the Bulldoze, but despite being super effective it really doesn't do that much. Thankfully she does miss the Thunder Wave though, so we can go for a Headbutt, which does do good damage, but we get paralysed by the static. We do end up getting the flinch though, which is something, and somehow we're still faster and take it out the next turn. Next up is a Dragonair, which goes to Dragon Pulse straight away, but we take it no problem and go for a Headbutt, which does about half. We eventually take it out with one more Headbutt, but we're left on relatively low health. Claire's already down to her last Pokemon, Kingdra, who goes for Hyper Beam, which I was sure was going to take us out, but we somehow survive. A couple of Headbutts bring it down to KO range, as she can't move the next turn, but she does end up fully healing with a Max Potion. Even so, we're able to hit one more Headbutt before we go down, so I send in our new Pokemon Doris. Kingdra has to recharge again as I go for a Dazzling Gleam, which almost takes it out but not quite, and next turn she just goes for another Hyper Beam which Doris can survive, and one more Dazzling Gleam is enough to finish it off. And with that we've got ourselves 8 badges. We make our way through Victory Road where we have one last battle with Zwigo. This fight was kinda tough. First up is Weavile, so I lead with Doris, and go for the Dazzling Gleam, but he swaps out into Magneton, once again with the predictions there. It doesn't do that much, so I swap into Joey, who unfortunately gets paralysed by a Thunder Wave and then hit by a Thunderbolt, but we survive easily and take it out with an Earthquake. Weavile comes back out and sets up a Swords Dance, as we get fully paralysed, which is really quite scary. Even with the +2 we survive a Night Slash somehow, and we don't get fully paralysed this turn, so we can take it out with a 4-time super effective Strength. Golbat is up next and goes for a Poison Jab, which unfortunately we can't survive, so we just swap into Mimic and go for a Thunderbolt, which he somehow survives even though it was a critical hit. We're confused by a Confuse Ray, but you guessed it, our Persimberry heals us up, and I go for one more Thunderbolt to take it out, but he actually swaps into Meganium. As you might expect, Thunderbolt really doesn't do that much damage at all, but this turn I decide to go for Mirror Coat, as we're hit with an Energy Ball. It brings it down to red health, but he heals with a Citrus Berry, but that's not really a problem. We survive one more Energy Ball and just go for one more Mirror Coat to take it out. Alakazam is out next, so I outspeed and go for a Thunder, which does over half, but we can't take a Psychic. I decide to swap into Doris, who takes a Psychic no problem, and hit back with a Dazzling Gleam, which is enough to take it out from there. The Golbat comes back out, but we're able to outspeed and KO with a Psychic, and now it's down to his final Pokemon, Gengar. I was hoping we'd be faster, but we're not, and we just can't take a Shadow Ball. It's now just down to my last Pokemon, Machamp. He goes for the Shadow Ball, which hardly does anything, all things considered, and we can just go for the super effective knockoff for the one-hit KO. Gengar goes down, and we beat Zwigo for the final time. Now we're at the Pokemon League, let's have a look at our team. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out. Even though we've only got 4 Pokemon, we've got a diverse bunch here. We've got fast Pokemon like Electrode, special attackers like Mr. Mime, and physical tanks like Machamp and Kangaskhan. Overall, I'm really happy with the team, but I don't know how well this team's going to do against the Pokemon League. Well, I guess there's only one way to find out. Let's do this. First up is Psychic type user Will. He starts off with a Xatu, so I lead off with Joey, and one Crunch does well over half. He hits back with a Psychic, which doesn't really do too much, and one more Crunch is enough to KO, and next up is Jinx. I go for crunch, and to be honest, Jinx took it a lot better than I was expecting. It still does over half though when we get hit with another psychic, which we survive, so we can just take it out with one more crunch. And next up is Executor. Once again I outspeed and go for crunch, which does about half, but we also get the defense drop. But I was sure we were going to go down to a psychic, but somehow we survive with 1 HP remaining. Joey really is bulky. This means we can go for one more crunch for the KO, and next up is Alakazam. Unfortunately though, we're not outspeeding this, so we go down to a psychic. So I make the questionable play of swapping into Machamp, who gets hit with a psychic, but we survive. I go for the knockoff, which is super effective, and it's a one-hit KO. See, that wasn't such a stupid play after all. Next up is Slowbro, so I just outspeed and go for another knockoff, which does a great amount of damage as well, but obviously we're not surviving another psychic, so we go down as I swap into Mimic, and finish it off with a Thunderbolt, and now it's just down to his final Pokemon, another Xatu. Thunderbolt almost takes it out, but he survives on a sliver and goes for Confuse Ray. When will these people learn that we have a Person Berry? He does fully heal with a full restore, but 2 more Thunderbolts are enough to take it out, and we've already beaten the first member of the Elite Four. Next up is Poison user Koga. He starts off with an Ariados, so I lead with Doris, and go straight for the Psychic, which much to my surprise doesn't KO. I go for one more to take it out, but you guessed it, he swaps out into Fortress. Our Psychic really doesn't do that much, so I decide to swap into Electrode, and this ended up being a good play as Ironhead really doesn't do that much damage. I go for the Thunderbolt, which is an easy 2-hit KO from here, and next up is Ariados, who unfortunately survives the Thunderbolt, and then just goes for Giga Drain for a small amount. One more Thunderbolt takes it out, no problem though, and next up is Venomoth. I go for another Thunderbolt for a decent amount of damage, as we get confused by a Supersonic. You know the drill. One more brings it down to KO range, as we just survive a Bug Buzz, and take it out with one more. Next up is Muck, so I just go for a Thunder, which doesn't do that much as Muck has a lot of special defense, and we go down to a Sludge Bomb. I swap into Machamp, who gets hit with a Screech, but that's fine as I just go for an Earthquake, which is enough to finish it off from there. Next up is Weezing, so I just go for a knockoff as we get hit with a Toxic, but it really doesn't do that much. I was gonna leave Machamp in so I could get a safe switch into Mr. Mime, but he just goes for Explosion, taking us both out. Now I send in Doris once again, as Koga sends out Crobat. We get outsped and hit by a Poison Jab, which is super effective, and unfortunately we go down. I send in Joey and go for the Headbutt as he goes for a double team, but we still hit and it does good damage. He just goes for Super Fang a couple of times, so we can just take it out with 2 more Headbutts, and just like that, we beat Koga. Next up is Bruno though, and of all the people who I thought would cause me problems, I did not think it would be him, but here we are. His Machamp in particular is just so powerful, it just basically sweeps my entire team. I knew I was going to need more levels, so I did some grinding, and came back with a much stronger team. First up is Hitmontop, so I lead with Doris, who takes a dig no problem, and hits back with a Psychic. I know I'm going to need Doris for later, so I decide to swap into Joey, who takes a dig no problem, and I was going to outspeed and KO with a Headbutt, but he has the Quick Claw, which means he goes first, hitting a close combat which almost takes us out. We do just survive though and finish it off with a Headbutt, and next up is Heracross. I do some decent damage with Headbutt, but we don't get the flinch and go down to a close combat the next turn, so I swap back into Doris and just KO with a Dazzling Gleam. Hitmonchan's up next, so I go for the Psychic, which brings it down to red health as he goes for a Poison Jab. We do just survive the hit though and take it out with a Dazzling Gleam the next turn, and next up is Onyx, who's 4 times weak to grass, so I just go for the Energy Ball for an easy one-shot. Next up is Hitmonlee, and I know this thing likes to go for Sucker Punch, so I decide to confuse it with a Confuse Ray first, which actually ends up working. He hits himself in confusion, and then we just go for the Psychic, which I was sure was going to take it out, but he survives on a sliver of health. This isn't actually a problem though, as he just hits himself in confusion again the next turn and goes down, and now we're down to his final Pokemon, Machamp. I outspeed, hitting a Psychic, which does just over half, but he lands a Rock Slide which we obviously can't survive, so I decide to swap into my own Machamp. He actually fully heals with a Max Potion as I hit a close combat, but it's fine, it does over half, so we can just outspeed and take it out the next turn, right? Nope, somehow his is faster than mine. He must be EV trained in speed or something. He lands a Cross Chop, but somehow we survive even with our lower defense, so we can just take it out with one more close combat. I am so glad that fight's over. Honestly, it took so many attempts. The final member of the Elite Four is Karim. Something asks to see the manager, and she starts off with an Umbreon. I start with Machamp and straight away our Quick Claw takes effect, and I go for the Strength, which I replace with Close Combat just as it was a little bit more reliable. Despite not being as powerful, it still does loads of damage, but we do get confused and then hit with a Feint attack, but it's fine, we don't hit ourselves in confusion and it goes down the next turn. Next up is Gengar, who burns us with a Will-O-Wisp, which is a bit of a pain, but we still land a knockoff for about half its health. Yet again the Quick Claw takes effect, but we hit ourselves in confusion, as she goes for Curse. Our residual damage is really starting to rack up now, and unfortunately after all that we can't take a Shadow Ball, so I just swap into Electrode, who can outspeed and take it out with a Thunderbolt. Next up is Persian, so I just go for a Thunderbolt for decent damage, as we're hit with a Play Rough. It doesn't do that much, and another Thunderbolt brings it down to red health, as he hits another Play Rough. She doesn't heal up or anything, so one more Thunderbolt takes it out, and next up is Weavile. I outspeed and go for a Thunder for over half thanks to a critical hit, and we get the Paralysis as well. Not only that, we somehow survive an Ice Punch on 1 health, and take it out with yet another critical hit Thunder. What are the chances of that happening? Next up is Houndoom, so I just stay in and go for a Thunder, which does okay damage as we get taken out by a Pursuit. Our ability Aftermath takes effect though, which deals even more damage to it, and now I swap into Joey as she fully heals with a Max Potion. Earthquake does well over half, and we can take a Flamethrower with ease, so one more's enough to take it out, and now we're down to our final Pokemon, Honchkrow. I outspeed and go for a super effective Ice Punch for about half, as he lands a super powerful Brave Bird. Obviously it's enough to take us out, but I'm not too worried as we still have Doris, who's faster and has the super effective Dazzling Gleam. It's enough to take it out, and we've now beaten the Elite Four. All that stands between us and victory now is Lance, the champion. And let me tell you, Lance was no pushover. He starts off with a Gyarados, so I lead with Mimic, and goes straight for the Thunder, which is an easy one-shot. Next up is Charizard. I know this thing's part Dragon, so instead of attacking with an electric move, I go for Mirror Coat, in the hopes we can survive a Flamethrower. Thankfully we can, and because of the amount of damage that he did to us, Mirror Coat brings it all the way down to a sliver of health. I thought he was going to heal or something here, but he doesn't, so one Thunderbolt's enough to finish it off. Next up is one of his Dragonite, and as you can see, Thunder hardly does anything at all. He retaliates with a Hyper Beam, which we can't survive, so I swap into Joey and go for the 4x super effective Ice Punch, but even that is not enough. We're hit with another Hyper Beam, which doesn't actually do as much as I was expecting, and we can take it out with one more Ice Punch. Next up is Kingdra, who goes for Focus Energy, as I hit a Headbutt, which doesn't really do that much. He then goes for a Dragon Pulse, which takes us out, and let me tell you, this thing is a beast. I swap into Doris, who's actually faster, and go for a Dazzling Gleam, but he just hangs on. He goes for a Surf and gets another critical hit, of course, but we survive with 5 health remaining. This means we can take it out with one more Dazzling Gleam, but next up is Aerodactyl. This thing ended up being the bane of my existence. It pretty much outspeeds my entire team, and takes out Doris with an Aerial Ace. I swap into Machamp, who gets hit with another Aerial Ace, but we do survive and hit a Strength, but it really doesn't do that much. We get taken out by one more Aerial Ace, and that was our last Pokemon, so I was pretty sure I was going to need to do some training. We're not even on his strongest Pokemon yet. I try again, and this time we get lucky with Confusion, so we can take it out with a couple of Strengths, but his last Pokemon is a shiny, level 60 Dragonite. Needless to say, I could not beat this Dragonite. Even Joey's 4x super effective Ice Punch hardly does any damage, and basically our entire team gets 1 or 2 hit KO'd. I was going to need to do some training. A lot of training. I basically just kept going through the Elite Four until I won, and by the time we got the win, our Pokemon were in the 70s. We eventually make it back to this Dragonite once again, and the team is in better shape this time. Due to the level difference, Kangaskhan is now faster, and right off the bat we get a critical hit Ice Punch, which does over half. He goes for Fly though, which we somehow survive with 5 health remaining, so I thought I could get one more Ice Punch in, but he has extreme speed. We go down, and we're down to my final Pokemon, Doris. I outspeed, go for the Dazzling Gleam, and thankfully it's just enough to take it out. Dragonite goes down and we beat the champion Lance, and beat Pokemon Polished Crystal using only in-game trades. And that is the end of this run. I know you're probably wondering where the battle with Red is, but unfortunately, as you can see here, my save file actually got corrupted upon beating the league. I don't know how this happened, but I guess that means we're just going to have to leave it there. Regardless, I hope you guys still enjoyed this run. I gotta say, I really had fun with this. Having Pokemon not obey you at the start is an interesting extra challenge actually. You didn't really see it much in this video, but it did actually cause some problems. Not just with gym leaders, I mean like with just normal trainers as well. Once we got the 4th badge though, that problem basically just went away, and after that the run was pretty fun. It was actually surprisingly difficult as well. Having the game on set mode really added an extra challenge, and obviously we only had a team of 4 for the whole game. The Pokemon themselves though were really good. Electrode was fast and could hit decently hard with its electric type moves, and Machamp was an absolute physical attacking beast. Doris was a latecomer to the team but really proved itself useful, especially against dragon types, and I gotta say Kangaskhan was probably my favourite Pokemon on the team. It was fast, it could hit hard, it had a good moveset, there's really nothing not to like. Overall, I really enjoyed this run, and I really would recommend that you give this ROM hack a try. In my opinion, it's so much better than regular Crystal. If you guys enjoyed this video, then please consider leaving a like. It really is appreciated, and it really does help the channel. If you have any challenge requests that you'd like me to take on, then please leave them in the comments below, and if I pick your idea, I'll give you a shout out in the next video. That's pretty much all I've got for you today, so thank you all so much for watching. Until next time.